Okay, so this video might be a little bit lengthy, but what we're going to do is break down the Bad Blood video as a whole, looking at it sort of almost frame by frame and picking apart the key things that happen. You may have to refer to examples from this video in your exam, and so it's worthwhile making sure that you have those examples ready and that you understand what's going on. So we start this video with selective focus. The background seems more important than the sort of windows that we're opening here to look at it. We've got a panoramic wide shot to show the London skyline, so it's very recognisable that this is London because we've got buildings such as the Gherkin, and the low key lighting overall creates this ominous atmosphere. Now we then cut to an office setting which contrasts what we've seen before because it's brighter, it does have more high key lighting, but it still looks a little bit dark and impersonal. We have a static camera here as well, so the demographic realise that something's about to happen, we just don't know what, and that raises that tension and suspense for when the body in the final image you see here is thrown onto the table. Now this shocks the audience because it's not something we would expect to see within a video, particularly by an artist such as Taylor Swift. If we look at the man in detail, he's wearing a business suit which would suit the office environment, but he's also blindfolded, and this puts the video into the action genre because it uses recognisable tropes and references to movies like Kill Bill, so in this instance it's referring to the Crazy 88s. Swift is then initially very impersonal. She doesn't use any mode of address, she's got her back to the camera, but we can tell that her dress codes are sexualized. They emphasize her body but sort of fit into this sort of office location workwear style dress codes. I mean, it's not something that we would wear to work on a day-to-day basis, but that's what it's designed to look like. Now she then uses indirect mode of address in that centre shot when we get a close-up of her face. It creates a sense of arrogance, particularly in the sense that she's sort of applying her lipstick in an overly exaggerated way. It emphasises her sexuality, and we have her name appear alongside her. Now all of the cast members got to choose their names, including Taylor Swift, but the name that she's chosen not only could refer to perhaps the way that she's presented within the media as a sort of catastrophe in relationships. It could also link to this idea that she is cat obsessed and she does have 3 cats now. Either way, the fact that we see her name first tells us that she's the protagonist and is potentially and most likely going to be the hero if we break this down in terms of props characters. The font that shows her name is capitalized, it's serif, so again using these common conventions for action films as well. Now the camera movement that we have here zooms out from Taylor Swift and we see Selena Gomez, who's very famously one of Swift's friends. She's portrayed as a villain given that she's dressed completely in black, so again that signifies death, evil, and it's also very sexualized given the fact that she's fighting in heels and an incredibly short skirt. Her name pops up alongside her just as Taylor Swift's had, and we've got arson here. Now it's a bit more of a quirky spelling of arson, but again it implies this sort of criminal activity and links to fire, and this could be really important for later on in the video. It also shows us from this little shot that she appears to be enjoying what she's doing because she's fighting these bad guys with a bit of a smirk and a smile on her face. We then have props here which create a sort of intertextual link to Bond films because the compact that Taylor Swift is using acts as a way of sort of looking at what's going on behind her. So it's a way of using everyday items for different purposes. Now we've got quite an interesting camera shot here because on the one hand we've got this selective focus where we can see the background, and we've got a sort of point of view shot where we're in the position of Taylor Swift holding that compact, but equally we're getting an indirect view as to what's happening behind Taylor Swift. So we can see that arson here is collecting the briefcase. Now the audience then are witness to the betrayal by Selena Gomez through this over-the-shoulder shot. This automatically makes us favour Taylor Swift even if we have these preconceived ideas about her and we don't necessarily like her as a person or an artist. Now we've got another iconic landmark as she's pushed out of the window, which we can see through Tower Bridge. So again, firmly cements this in London. We can also see this selective focus as well. The smashed window is being the focus here. It's very reminiscent again of those films that we've already seen, such as James Bond and Kill Bill. Now the point of view shot where she's reaching out places the demographic in the position of Swift yet again. further creates animosity towards Selena Gomez, and we start to get the credits for the video appearing here. And this is actually where the video begins, so we've got quite a scene here before we actually get into the music video itself. Now, Joseph Kahn has produced a lot of other music videos. He's created for artists such as Lady Gaga, so he's a well-known director, but the fact that this is billed as a film sort of emphasizes the way that music videos have changed as a whole, because they're no longer just something to promote a track, they almost stand on their own as well. Now, the different shards of glass that you can see here, I don't know where you can see it in this video because it is kind of small, but if you pause the video at this point, the different shards of glass that you can see hold different images of Taylor Swift, and this is very, very similar to the music video for Style, which was released, I believe, after this. Now, the scene that we've got on the very far right is very iconic. It would remind a lot of the older audiences of films such as Die Hard. The low angle shot, or the worm's eye view shot that we've got here, emphasises the extent of the betrayal. We can see how hard and how far Swift falls, but it also makes her seem smaller and more vulnerable. Now, when she lands on the car, this is very reminiscent of Sin City. It may increase the demographic at this point because many of the audience members might have seen these films and are likely to remember the scenes and be interested in it. However, when she lands on the car, she's very sexualized. Her positioning is very feminine. The dress codes that she uses, again, are heavily sexualized. And the fact that sort of the skirt she's wearing has got this sort of zip going up it suggests that she's not this, young girl who we first saw when she released, Love Story and that sort of stuff. She's changed and she's developed as well. Now, the image on the far right almost looks like a poster advertising a film and is very, very similar to Sin City, particularly through the typography, the red capitalised font. It's sans serif, and we can see that it's got slashes all over it. So again, that could represent the damage that's done by the car, but it could also be just this idea of fitting into the action, sort of superhero style film genre that we've got going on here. Now, we've got a high-angled shot, makes Swift look small and vulnerable, but also what it does is emphasise her body as well. We finally get some direct mode of address in this close-up, so it makes it feel like she's talking to us directly, and then she falls through the glass, which mirrors the camera movement. The camera tracks her as she falls through this glass, as she lands onto this sort of healing table / pod that we get in the very far right. Now, initially that's got low-key lighting, so we've got Enigma. We want to know where she is, what's going to happen. We do notice though that her clothes have changed, and although they're not fully visible, we can tell that they're white, so this signifies purity and good, again cementing this idea that she's the hero of this video. Now, the radio release features Kendrick Lamar, so this is a feature track. He's shown as being in control of the organisation, given that he's so high up, and also that there's this sort of futuristic element to what's going on. Now, his pseudonym is a reference to an internet celebrity, so again would be some way of increasing the demographic. We then have an extreme long shot to show the extent of the control that he's in, because he's positioned in the centre of the frame, showing that he's at the centre of this organisation. We switch back to Taylor Swift, who's again in that sort of healing room on the table. We can see again that her body and her sort of sexuality is being emphasised through the positioning of her leg, and it sort of takes away from the believability of this action style that we've got going on here. Got a lot of interesting camera shots in this video though, because we have split screen here, which shows a unity between Taylor Swift and Kendrick Lamar through the symmetry that we've got in their faces. Now, Taylor Swift appears more innocent due to the paler complexion and toned down lipstick, but she does have a lot of eye makeup on here as well. Her outfit also closely resembles Lilu from The Fifth Element, which I'll come back to later in the video. Lena Dunham is the next celebrity that we see, even though we've got loads appearing throughout this video. She's portrayed as a sort of mafia style head of the organisation, sort of almost rivaling Kendrick Lamar. It's very reminiscent of The Godfather, and although Dunham is a well-known feminist and is known for her feminist comments, she's portrayed in a very masculine way here. Now, this is also a video that starts to use male gaze because we've already had several opportunities to view Taylor Swift through this heterosexual male viewpoint, which could make this video very contradictory with the idea of it being feminist. Now, Dunham and Lamar are shown to be opposite each other in the overall organisation, so perhaps vying for control as we've looked at here, but it also provides an element of binary opposition, which is suggested by Levi Strauss. And we've got another high angled shot here that shows again the extent of their control. More split screen shows further binary opposition between the two characters. Kendrick Lamar has more dark clothing, viewed in low key lighting, while Taylor Swift is in white and is in high key lighting. Again, this symbolic dress code's very, very similar to Lilu from The Fifth Element. We then get a close-up shot of Kendrick Lamar, and we've got Barth's enigma codes, which we could argue here because his glasses hide his eyes and his expression. So we don't actually know whether he's giving direct mode of address or not, and this can create a barrier between us and him as a character, as we wonder what he has to hide. Now we get the first of several shots which serve very little purpose, okay? So at this point we really do see Laura Mulvey's male gaze theory coming into play, because the shot on the right hand side serves no purpose whatsoever other than to emphasise Taylor Swift's body. So this would encourage the male demographic to obviously view the video, but it could alienate a lot of parents who have used Taylor Swift as a role model for their children, because at this point she really is pushing the boundaries as to where she can pitch things that are appropriate for her very young audience. We get an extreme close-up of Kendrick Lamar, which could indicate aggression, but more importantly, emphasises how important what he's saying is. And we get a close-up particularly on the mouth and the lines that he's saying at this point. We then have another split screen, but this time Taylor Swift and Kendrick Lamar are back to back. So this could provide a lot of different readings. Initially, we could imagine that the two characters are at odds with one another, but it could be that they're two sides of the same identity. And then we have another shot which again shows very little purpose other than to emphasise Taylor Swift's body. The camera's positioned in a way that it forces us to look down her body and really does objectify her at this point. We then have a shot that's very repetitive. We've seen this before, so it's very reminiscent of the first time that we saw Kendrick Lamar. And music videos do go through series where they repeat shots that we may have seen, and that's not just applicable to this video. Now, the wind effect that we have on Taylor Swift's hair combined with the white dress codes could also be a link to Marilyn Monroe at this point, but we flick very quickly to a scene that's very similar to The Matrix, where we have Taylor Swift in this very black clothing providing contrast to the women around her, which are in white. And the person around her is Haley Steinfeld. She's named after one of the characters in The Matrix, Trinity. So this provides a sort of point of view shot. It's almost like we are in Taylor Swift's position here as we're seeing the three versions of Steinfeld around her. The characters all use indirect mode of address, and in fact the only two characters of the Trinity are seen here. So we could be that we are the third person within the Trinity at this point. Now we then have further male gaze seen when they enter the locker room. The low shot is designed to look up the women's legs at this point, but it could also emphasise the characters and their bodies. There's another link here to the Hunger Games. One of the characters is carrying a bow very similar to Katniss, but it's also very similar to the armoury that you see within the film as well. We then have Soraya, who portrays dilemma. We've got enigma codes because we're wondering what part of her causes this dilemma, this confusion, this indecision. But the dress codes that are on herself and also the person that you can see in the background, again, sexualise each of the women who are here and also emphasises that male gaze. Now, Swift's entire look and demeanour has changed since the beginning of the video. She seems more aggressive and angry, and she barely looks at the audience. We've got a lot of indirect mode of address here. but more of her squad and her friends are shown, particularly when we see Gigi Hadid. She's referenced as Slay Z. Now this could be a reference to the rapper Jay-Z, potentially. She's dressed very similar to Taylor Swift, showing that there's a unity between them and that they're all on the same team. Finally, we get a little bit of direct mode of address, close-up shot, making the lines that she says more important, before flicking to a shot of Ellie Goulding, who's holding the bazooka with the X emblem on it. Now, although this could be a reference to her character's name, which is Destructica X, a lot of the audience are also going to be fans of Ed Sheeran. Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran not only are friends themselves, but they also share a demographic to a certain point. And so the audience may be aware of the fact that on Ed Sheeran's Multiply album, which was, sort of marketed through this symbol X, Ellie Goulding was potentially the inspiration behind his song Don't. So it's not necessarily working out well for Goulding to use this emblem or this reference. Now we have an emphasis on Taylor Swift breaking through the wall, which could be an intertextual link to Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball. Seems very similar in terms of the way that it's set up and the way the camera's positioned. And the mid to long shot here emphasises the fact that, again, Taylor Swift has changed. Not only is she wearing different clothing, although it's still in black, but she's got a long braid, which could be another reference to Katniss from the Hunger Games. She teams up with Martha Hunt, who is featured as the character Home Slice. It could be a reference to the very close relationship and friendship that the two have outside of the video, but it's also a way of mirroring the two characters by having Swift on one side with the long braid and then Martha Hunt with the long hair on the other. Now we've got an invisible car in the centre of this locker room, which is similar to James Bond's Die Another Day. It suggests secrecy, but it also shows a unity between Kendrick Lamar and Taylor Swift because they are together in the car watching what's going on. The long shot that we cut to between the two characters again emphasises the bodies of the women, particularly because they've got high heels on. High heels, if you are not aware, are a way of emphasising and sexualising a woman's body because it forces the body into a different shape compared to if you're just wearing flats. Now, this is again very similar to an arena style fight from the Hunger Games, but it's also very sexualising and objectifying. Taylor Swift looks completely different when you see her in the car in the centre shot compared to the way that we see her either side of that. She seems more relaxed. Both of them are reclined within the car. They've changed their attire again. Kendrick Lamar's no longer hiding behind his sunglasses and her hair is not pulled back so tightly. Now we have Cara Delevingne on the right hand side, who's a very well known friend of Taylor Swift. She's presenting the character Mother Chucker, which could be a reference to the fact that she's well known for speaking her mind and is known to be very blunt, but it is also a pun and a play on words on the insult, which I'm not going to speak of, because I don't want to get kicked off YouTube. Swift is also referencing Madonna through the glittered cups on her bra, but also she's got reference to Prince, who she has also said is an inspiration for her music through the shoulder pads and the very high collar that we've got on as well. She flicks to Zendaya, who's the youngest member of the group to be featured, and even though she's very innocent in terms of her look, this is put into opposition compared to the name that she has, which is Cutthroat. Now both her and Taylor Swift are presented almost identically here, through the way that they're positioned and the weapons that they have, particularly when we then see the contrast again between the child's toy, the white colouring, the fact that we've got dark low-key lighting, and this idea of Zendaya being quite young and innocent. It could also be a sort of intertextual reference to the character of Hit Girl from Kick-Ass as well. Now, Hayley Williams from Paramore appears here, and this is where I'm going to talk a little more about Lulu from The Fifth Element. When I was researching this video and found out that all the celebrities got to pick their own name, I found it quite interesting that Hayley Williams chose the Crimson Curse and that she chose to look the way that she does. She wanted to look like Lulu from The Fifth Element, but I would argue that the way that she is dressed here is not as convincing as the way that Taylor Swift is dressed at the beginning when she's getting healed, because that seems way more like Lulu than this does here. And in fact, to me, I would argue that this is another intertextual reference, but not The Fifth Element, instead to Mystique from X-Men, because we've got the blue clothing and the bright red hair, which is very, very similar to the way that Mystique is presented in X-Men. Let me know if you agree in the comments below. Now we then have a close-up shot of Taylor Swift, which is very reminiscent of Kill Bill, but also indicates again the changing personality. She's now in white, she's got lighter makeup, she seems more natural, and again she's using this indirect mode of address to raise tension before we cut to Lily Aldridge, who's mirroring Taylor Swift's stance and style. Now she interestingly gives direct mode of address, which makes us feel more connected, but she also looks more dominant, more powerful and more confident. Now in the close-up shot that we've got on the right hand side, we've got a reference to the film Lady Snowblood, but the costumes themselves are sort of a mix and match between sort of Princess Leia in The Empire Strikes Back, James Bond A View to a Kill, and also Lara Croft in Tomb Raider. Either way, they all contain this sort of action genre that we seem to be sticking with throughout this video. Now the camera movement again tracks Swift, but it does so very quickly, which overemphasizes her movement and makes her seem almost inhuman in the way that she moves, and it's very similar to the way that martial artists move in kung fu movies. Now the way that she's positioned when she finally stops moving is poised, ready for attack, and that could be again another link to the Matrix as well. Now we have a complete contrast when we see her on the far right, which comes right after that scene, because it looks like she's been working out. Her hair appears damp and tousled. She's putting on gloves, which suggests she's going to be fighting, but she's doing so in, again, an overly sexualized way. And this could reference other music videos, perhaps even what we would class as historic music videos, such as Dirty by Christina Aguilera. Now we see Karlie Kloss shown as Knockout. This is not only a way of sort of representing her as a very beautiful woman, but she's also portrayed in this instance as a fighter as well. She's in a very guarded stance, so again it creates a barrier between her and us as the audience, and it could be a point of view shot that we're in Taylor Swift's position here, looking through Taylor Swift's eyes. Now the scene in the centre uses recognisable tropes from films such as Fight Club, Divergent and Rocky, but we've got again another reference to Ed Sheeran, because this is very similar to the fight that we see in Ed Sheeran's Shape of You video. Now although the fight plays on this stereotypical fantasy of many men in that it's two women fighting each other, but the audience are entirely female, so this again adds to this feminist reading because it's putting women in the place that men would traditionally hold. Further intertextual references seen through the next scene, because Swift is back again, she's in black, again emphasising the dual sides of her personalities through being shown in both black and white. And we've also got the fact that she's wearing a red sort of helmet, or we've got red accents on her helmet, which not only matches the lipstick, but is a reference to the album that came before 1989, which was Red. Now the intertextual link here is from the film Tron, and we can see her and another person racing through what appears to be a car park. When they finally take their helmets off, we see that the other person is Jessica Alba. Both her and Taylor Swift move in time through this little section, so they both do things at the same time, which could also be an explanation for that code name Domino and the fact that the two of them are sort of in sync with each other. We get an extreme close-up used on the flare. Now flares normally signify help or assistance, but in this instant it seems sort of like a way of rallying her squad for this final fight that sort of Swift is taking on here. Now the visor that she's got on in the middle of the screen here is one that's very similar to Tron and also similar to the Trinity, which we saw earlier. So again, no meaning involved in this particular shot here, but it does emphasize again Taylor Swift's body through the slow motion walk. Interestingly, we've got Mariska Hargitay. I can't pronounce it, guys. Correct me below. And also Ellen Pompeo, who are walking side by side. That puts these two guys on equal regard, and they are equally regarded in Swift's view. Now, famously, Taylor Swift has named her cats after the characters that the two women play. So we've got Olivia, which is Mariska's character in Law and Order, and Meredith, which is Ellen's character in Grey's Anatomy. We've also got another cameo by Cindy Crawford. She's an incredibly famous model. Now, from this point of view, we could have a feminist reading because we see her featuring in something that is normally associated with a younger audience, showing that she's still, you know, attractive, she's still relevant. But it also sort of puts her as the sort of head of this organisation as well, in that she's the one giving the nod to Taylor Swift to say, yes, go for it. The hexagonal tunnel that they're all walking through, interestingly, could also be a reference to Prometheus. Now, Swift gives one final look at the camera and we finally get this sort of confident, direct mode of address, symbolising that she's in control. Could also be letting us into a little secret. And at this point in the narrative, if we were plotting it against Todorov's theory, which if you want me to do, by the way, just pop a comment below, would be the climax or the recognition stage of the video. Now we have a pixelated and disrupted image on the right hand side. This could be indicative of Swift breaking out of her fears or getting ready to tackle those enemies, and also links into the futuristic element of this sort of music video as well. Now we've got an extreme long shot to show the recognisable features of London as well as emphasising the women. We've got sort of the explosion in the background and the clothing itself, which could have links to the film Sucker Punch. Mirroring Taylor Swift's squad, we've got Gomez with her version. Now they've all got masks on, which is very similar to Mad Max, but importantly it obscures their faces. Now Gomez at this point is representing Katy Perry in terms of who the song was reportedly written about, and the video ultimately ends on the two fighting, but we don't see who wins, which again is very sort of important, as it signifies the fact there wasn't really a winner between the feud that Swift and Perry had, although that has now been resolved. Long video today, guys, I know, but here are all of our key terms that we've used. What would be a really good idea is going through these and highlighting any that you don't know so that you can look them up and sort of further your knowledge. If you've got any questions or comments, then pop them down below in the comments section and get in touch with me through Twitter at media_revision. You can also subscribe, hit the button below, and if you press the little bell icon next to it, you get instant notifications every time I post a new video. And I'll see you guys later for the next video.